Romany and Raq by G Bramwell Evens. Give me the clear blue sky over my head and the green turf beneath my feet, a winding road before me, and then to thinking. Chapter 12. A Displenishing Sale. February. On our way up to the farm, I called in for a moment to see Sally Stordy. We were out earlier than usual, as the mornings were beginning to peep out with spring light. When she heard of our destination, she told us that Alan and Joe were going to a plenishing sale which was being held at Cairn Howe. "Leastways," she said, "I overheard Alan asking Neb what time the bus runs to Neat End, and that's just about where the farm lies. I reckon that'll be where they'll be making for today." "What is a displenishing sale?" I asked, more to hear her views on such an incident than for information. "It's a selling off of everything that's on a farm," she answered. "Old John Laverick of Cairn Howe has made his bit, I reckon. His uncle died a few years back and left him a goodish bit, and he's been very careful. I never heard how much it were, but soon afterwards he got a car, so it must have been a tidy sum." She sighed as though she too wished she had an uncle. "You may have a car of your own one day, Sally," I said. "You never know." "That's the only car I shall ever have," she answered, "and I push it myself." She pointed to an old perambulator which stood in a corner of the scullery. "But John Laverick," she continued, "is getting beyond farming and he's going to retire. So everything's been sold lock, stock and barrel today. It'll be a bit of a sad time for him, I reckon, for he's fond of farming." She busied herself fettling up fireside, but soon hearing the sound of wheels in the street looked out of the window. "There's old Tom Graham off to sale, I'll warrant. He's a near un, I can tell you. Hardly gives his missus enough to feed poultry, let alone run house, and sits there in chapel singing, 'Will the whole realm of nature mine.' It'd be a bad day for all of us if it were his. When our choir went out carolling at Christmas, they went up to Glencarn and—" "Is that his farm?" I asked. Sally nodded and continued, "And when they finished, he said to his missus, 'Give 'em double this time, we've had a better year than last.' And when old Sarah asked how much that were, he said, 'Give 'em tuppence.'" "And what will he be going to buy?" I asked. "Buy?" repeated Sally with a wry smile. "He'll buy nowt, I reckon, but he'll get his dinner free, and that'll just set him up fine. There'll be a big spread up there about 11. She glanced out of the window again and added, "Why, there's Joe and Alan coming down. I thought they'd be going. I should go wi' 'em if I were you." And so I bade her good day and joined my friends. "Are you going to Cairn Howe?" I asked as I met them. "Right first time," said Alan. "Are you coming with us?" When I told them that I was, Joe gave me a resounding thump on the back by way of emphasizing his welcome, and Raq looked at him in a puzzled way, uncertain whether some bodily damage were being planned. "I thought you went to a sale last week," I said as we waited for the bus. "Are you buying up the whole district?" "There's not much doing this time of the year," said Alan, referring to the farm work. "The frost's working for us," said Joe. "It pulverises the land and sweetens it, and it makes it much easier for the plough and harrow to do their work later. But here's the bus." My farmer friends and I entered and found it full of others who were bound for the sale. A chorus of "Morning, Joe," "Morning, Alan," greeted us, and I heard my companions reply to Tom and Abe, Dick and Harry. There are no misters in the countryside. They were all talking about the grading of eggs, and I learnt that a new association was being formed, whose members guaranteed to divide their supply of eggs into those weighing over and those weighing under 2 ounces. "We've not tried to compete with a foreigner," said one of the group. "We're letting him send in thousands of millions of eggs, and all on 'em graded. It's time we wakened up. Us farmers are the most conservative lot on the face of the earth, but we'll have to move with the times." "That's Patterson of Felrig talking," whispered Joe to me. "He's the most up-to-date farmer in the district. Does a bit of intensive work in grass growing, and even has electric light for giving his hens more daylight in the winter. Says it pays too. There was a lull in the conversation as the bus pulled up to take in more passengers. Then a little man in the corner said, "Talking about eggs reminds me of the best season I ever had with poultry." "Now for a yarn," Alan said quietly to me, giving me a nudge. "That's old Bill Braisby's brother Tom as is speaking." "Thou knows as how I was badly troubled with rats," said Tom, looking round at those nearest to him. "Well, a fellow come in one day and said as how he got 2 boxes of poison which were guaranteed to kill every rat about farm. Said he'd got 'em from some feller in market place." "Some quack, I reckon," whispered Joe to me. "Well," continued Tom, "one night I put poison down in the outhouse, which were overrun with 'em, and shut the door. Next morning I had to go away on business, and I forgot to tell missus about poison, and to keep poultry away from it. I never remembered out about it till middle of the morning, and then when I remembered I broke out in a cold sweat. I could see all poultry lying stiff and missus carrying on somewhat awful. When I got home I went to where I'd put down poison, and my worst fears were confirmed, for every bit were packed up clean as a whistle, and the hens were waiting round about looking for more." "None dead?" asked one of the hearers. "Not one," answered Tom. "And after that I had the biggest crop of eggs I ever had for years. I asked him as had got me poison to get me 2 more boxes, as it were extra for egg producing, but he never bought 'em. So now they knows how to get more eggs. Give 'em poison." Amid general laughter the bus pulled up, and we found ourselves at Cairn Howe. "What a crowd!" I said, as I viewed the number that had gathered for the sale. "There'll be 600 or 700 here," said Alan. "Let's go and have some dinner. It'll be in the barn up yonder. That's where they're all making for." Amid the general movement towards the scene of the lunch, little groups were gathered. As I passed, I could hear different topics of conversation. Some were discussing foot and mouth disease. I heard others denouncing the government. The groups maintained their numbers, but individuals would slip away and casually sidle into some other circle. So each farmer would listen to the varied broadcasting centres. Gossip, business, prices, prophecies, all centred round that sale, which became a vast watershed of news, irrigating the countryside with the 1,001 things which interest human beings. And who can describe the dinner itself, with the plates groaning under their burden of meat and vegetables, whilst the aged rafters overhead looked on wonderingly, and the wives of the farmers of the district saw to it that your plate was never empty. "Who pays for this?" I asked my friends. "The farmer whose things are being sold," said Alan. "I reckon it'll cost him nigh on £50 today." "But it puts 'em all in good humour," said Joe. "You can't sell much to folks with empty stomachs. Look at old Eb Scott over yonder. He don't care what becomes of him after this." Now the sale is on, and the auctioneer is talking so fast that I cannot understand a word he is saying. Around him is a sea of faces, and each farmer has his own way of bidding. Some raise a finger, others mutter that which is unintelligible to me, but the auctioneer understands and proceeds. They are selling the cattle now, and an old farmer with bushy eyebrows opposite to me just raises his left eyelid. That is his sign that he is willing to give another half-a-crown. How the auctioneer saw it I do not know. Great must be his powers of observation. At the back of the ring there is one bidder who, when he has reached his limit, tilts his bowler hat every time. The auctioneer understands the secret signal and looks elsewhere for another bid. I left the crowds for a few moments and had a look at the varied lots. There was a binder, harrows, seed drills, hay bogies, a churn, a separator, carts. I saw old John Laverick having a walk around, looking perchance for the last time at favourite ploughs, or on stock which had been his pride. Could any man see the dispersal of these without a heavy heart? On my return Alan was bidding. "What is he trying for?" I asked. "Hogs," said Joe to me. "Hogs?" I asked with surprise. "But you've got as many pigs as you can manage." Joe laughed. "The hogs is a kind of sheep," he answered. I was completely mystified as I listened to the talk round about me. I knew there were ewes and tups, but after that all the rest were sheep to me. But I heard men speaking of gimmers, shearlings, hogs, wethers. Then, among cattle, there were cows, bulls, stirks, heifers, bullocks, polled and unpolled. Joe laughed when I told him of this mystifying vocabulary and said, "Now you know how some of us feel when you parsons use some of your own special brand in the pulpit." My friend said it humorously, but I felt there was a great deal of truth in what he had said. "How's the sale going off?" I asked Alan quietly. "Oh, nobbut middlin'. Beasts aren't selling well. Fodder's ower scarce." At last everything had been disposed of. The hammer, devoid of all sentiment, had scattered the effects of John Laverick to the four winds. The bidders, thinking the sale was over, were turning to go homeward when the auctioneer called their attention to the last lot. Alan pulled my sleeve, and I saw in the ring a black and white sheepdog. It was slender of limb and reminded me of a cross-bred collie. It was led in by a string and looked pathetically out of place. I did not like the look in its quiet brown eyes. "This is the last sale," whispered Alan. "It's a fine dog too." As the auctioneer was describing its virtues, someone came and stood by me. I turned and saw that it was the old farmer to whom the dog belonged. As though some secret message had flashed to the dog, it raised its eyes and saw him, straightened itself slightly, and then slowly wagged its tail. There was nothing joyous in the motion, just the recognition of affection. For a moment I thought the old man was going to buy the dog in, but he changed his mind and, as the bidding commenced, with an effort turned away. The chatter continued all around me. After all, to most of them there, men were only bidding for a dog. After seeing Laverick, I rather fancied they were buying a bit of the old farmer's heart. "Who got him?" asked Joe of his brother. "Brownlee at Felston," answered Alan. "He'll make a good master for him." As we made our way to the bus, we went over to Laverick and bade him good-bye. "By the way," I said to him, "why didn't you keep that dog of yours?" He was silent for a moment and then said, "Wouldn't be fair. He lived for the sheep, and I'm a-going to live in the town." Then I understood.